Good day to everyone. I am Alejandro Villasante, the undergraduate student from Metallurgical Engineering, and I am glad to present you today this interesting topic that is production process of steel in Peru. SiderPeru and Aceros Arequipa are the two main companies that I will talk today. Before I start, I want to thanks the CONCYTEC, Fondesit, and the World Bank to make this talk possible. Okay, so let's start with and the most important, and that is that the production of steel is one important indicator of the development of a country. So this is a map of the country where I live, that is Peru, and it comes with two main steel making plants, one located on Chimbote on the region of Ancash, and that's SiderPeru, and the other one is located on Paracas, Ica, and that's Aceros Arequipa. So let's start with SiderPeru, and I want to tell you a little story about SiderPeru, and that is that it was founded as a national company during the government of the Peruvian president Manuel Odría. However, it was a national company during many years. On 2006, Gerdau, a big Brazilian company specialized on steelmaking process, acquired more than the 85% of the action. So nowadays, SiderPeru is more Brazilian than Peruvian. And something, unfortunately, about this is this comment. And as you can see here, you can appreciate a high tower. That is the blast furnace. And to produce steel, there are two main ways. One is employ the blast furnace, and the other one is using electric arc furnaces. In the case of SiderPeru, the blast furnace is not operating because some financial problems. So it's cheaper to import the product from the blast furnace than produces here. And because of that, the blast furnace is not operating. So what SiderPeru does to produce the steel products is employ the other way, the electric arc furnace employing scrap. So this is a picture of the scrapyard, and it's important to notice that it's important to identify what kind of scrap is employing. Scrap, as you know, comes to different pieces of metal, and one of the principal is the automobiles. So the components are, with many alloys and metals such as aluminum, copper, iron. So it's important to identify and classify because it has some consequence during the process. So what SiderPeru does here is to recollect and reduce the size. So when the scrap is reduces of the size, it goes to the electric arc furnace. So this is a picture of the electric arc furnace in which they employ graphite electrodes to melt the scrap and to convert it to liquid steel. So in this picture, you can see the electric arc furnace with the liquid steel, and it's being transported to the Ladle Oven. Okay. But before talk about the Ladle Oven, I want to mention here that in this project, during this moment of the electric arc furnace, we obtain two types of slags. One from the gases that the furnace emits, that is the type 1, and the other are the black powders that are on the bottom. Okay. Well, continue with the process. The electric arc furnace goes to another oven, and that is called the Ladle Oven, in which some samples are taken for chemical analysis. Okay, so here you can appreciate on the surface a layer of slag. That is because slag is less density than the liquid metal, that is steel. So here we identified two types of slag. One on the bottom of the ladle oven, that is the type 3-1, and the other one in the surface that is floating, that is the type 3-2. So in this picture, you can appreciate a sample that is taken for chemical analysis. It's important to do this chemical analysis because it depends on the quality of the steel. So a bad composition steel can be sold because they don't accomplish with some rules and laws to be employed in their functions. Well, when the chemical composition is the correct, it goes to the continuous casting process, in which there's a distributor and they produce some billets. Something important to notice is that the billet at a high temperature reacts with the oxygen from the air, and you can see that there are some scales that are oxides. So that oxides produced on the surface as scales are the type 4 sample of. Okay, so after the continuous casting, it goes to a rolling process. So first, it's a rolling process at a high temperature, known as hot rolling process, and that's important to mention because at the high temperature, it's easier to make these bars, okay, because it offers less resistance to be deformed. And here we can see the rolling process at a low temperature, known as cold rolling process. And steel making plants does this process because it permits us give the steel better mechanical properties and a better surface. And that's the main product of SiderPeru, that are the corrugated steel bars. And they are used for construction, basically. And in this table, we can appreciate the composition of the corrugated steel bar at SiderPeru. It's an ASTM A6006 steel. And I just want to mention that in some composition, chemical composition, they don't include the iron because the balance to complete the 100%, it's iron. So because of that, they don't mention it. Okay. The other main steel making plant in Peru is Aceros Arequipa. This is a picture of the plant in Pisco, located on the region of Ica, Peru. And something important about Aceros Arequipa that some years ago has another plant on the region of Arequipa, on the capital of Arequipa. But in 2016, they have to close the plant on Arequipa because some problems on the market, because they can compete with other kind of steel that were cheaper. And so the company focused their efforts on the plant in Pisco. Okay, so Aceros Arequipa employs some raw materials to produce the iron pig that are other component to produce steel. They also uses scrap. Okay, but let's talk about the direct reduction process. Let's start with the components. They employ the iron ore in form of pellets, coal, and lime. So these materials goes to a rotary kiln and to produce the iron pig that are a first form of steel, but it contains uh, more carbon than steel. Okay, so the objective of this rotary kiln is to reduce the iron that is oxide. Uh, the objective is to take away the oxygen present. Aceros Arequipa, as I mentioned before, comes with an scrapyard. And as I mentioned, they classify the scrap because it contains different alloys and materials, and it's important because it has some consequence during the process. And Aceros Arequipa select the scrap and reduces the size. And the iron pig and the scrap goes to an electric arc furnace that employs also 3 graphite electrodes to melt the pig iron and the scrap. So when the steel is molten, it goes to samely a ladle oven in which they take some samples to make the chemical composition analysis, and they check if the chemical composition is the correct one, and if it doesn't, they add some ferroalloys to give the correct composition. When the composition is correct, the ladle oven is moved to a tan dish, also known as distributor, to make the process of continuous casting. During the continuous casting, as you can see, they produce billets and they passes through some rolling mills to reduce the size of the billet and give them the shape of a bar. So, as SiderPeru also, Aceros Arequipa main product is the corrugated steel bars, and a different is that they employs another type of steel, that is the ASTM A6015. Okay, and this is the chemical composition on table 2. Just to conclude this presentation, and let's check some conclusions. So, the Peruvian steelmaking plants represents a great opportunity for us, for investigators, to optimize their process. As you can see during the presentation, the blast furnace in SiderPeru is not operating anymore. Aceros Arequipa had to close the plant on Arequipa. So there are an opportunity to optimize the process and make these companies rentable. And also, SiderPeru has another products like are the round steel bars, steel angles, steel square bars. So it depends of the rolling mills to produce these products. In the case of Aceros Arequipa, also produces wire rods, steel tubes, steel teeth, steel profiles. As it's the same. They depend on the rolling mill process. And we can say that the main difference between SiderPeru and Aceros Arequipa is that in Aceros Arequipa they continue using raw materials, no? Iron ore, coal, lime, to produce iron pig and then to make the steel. In the case of SiderPeru, it only uses scrap, just scrap. So that's all for today, and thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Alejandro Villasante, and thank you all. Thanks also the sponsor, the CONCYTEC from the SEED, the World Bank, for supporting this project. Okay, thank you very much. Now it is time for the questions. First, Professor Leang, you have any question for Alejandro Villasante?
Yes, thank you. Yes, Marana. Yeah, okay. So I had some trouble with pronouncing your name. It's a very nice talk. It's very give us a very clear picture about steel making industry in Peru. It's very nice to see that actually there are two companies operating. So how big volume do they produce, each of these companies? How many tons do they produce each year? It's Siders and also the Arequipa.
Oh, okay. How many tons of steel, of produced steel,
Yeah.
elaborated? Well, in the case of SiderPeru, they produces around 100,000 tons of products, of steel products, such as steel bars, corrugated steel bars. So in total, it's around 100,000 tons. On the case of Aceros Arequipa, on the plant in Pisco, they produce 88,000 tons of the corrugated steels and 100 tons of other pieces of steel that are the steel profiles, steel angles. So that is.
So 100,000? Not
100,000 tons.
No, not 1 million tons.
No, 1 million tons, no.
No, it's 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
that's they all together. Both companies together they produce.
Alejandro, is per year, per month?
Per year.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the for the second company, could you show that the second is they use ore? I assume that is high purity iron oxide.
Yeah.
Ore, because they with that cone, they reduce the clone cones. You know, they reduce the iron oxide to produce iron sponge, and then mix with the scrap to produce steel.
Yeah, that's correct. Aceros Arequipa, the second company, employs the iron ore to produce the iron pig, or also known as sponge iron. But the problem with the sponge iron is the content of carbon is too high. So they have to reduce that content of carbon.
For carbon, okay. Okay. There's four types of the samples we have got. That's from the Siders, right? From
the type 4, the slash type 4.
Yeah.
I have here to show. Okay, yeah, it's an oxide form on the surface of the billet, and that is because the reaction between the billet and the oxygen.
Yeah, sure. It's good. That's fine. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. That's good.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Endeliansha. Okay, Professor Ángel Bustamante, you have questions? Ángel, your microphone.
I don't know why in the composition, chemical composition in the SiderPeru, I don't know why is the problem with the iron. I don't know, this material no contain iron, or
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the meaning in this composition in SiderPeru.
In SiderPeru. Well, the ASTM and many others associations of steel materials such as IC, ASTM. So they don't include the iron on the composition of the steel because as we know, steel is made of iron and carbon mainly. So they focus on other elements. For example, stainless steels contain other elements and they have to be included. So it's like we know that the steel contains iron. So because we know that, they don't include it. They focus on the elements uses from the alloy.
What is the major element in this composition? What element is principal?
No, okay.
Carbon, manganese? No, I don't know.
Okay, so carbon is always present on the steel, but in SiderPeru they include more manganese to give the steel bar more to be resistant because they are used on construction.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ángel Bustamante. Does anybody else has questions? Maybe Pratap Kolur?
No questions from my side.
Okay,
Presentation is really good. No questions from my side.
Okay, thank you. Alejandro, what about the
Yes.
subject of... Yeah, thank you, Pratap. Alejandro, what about the subject of your thesis? Do you have you already thought one title or one, how are you addressing your thesis?
Oh, yes. So from my thesis, I was thinking to investigate about the influence of the microstructure of the steel Q235 that we are studying and on the mechanical properties.
Okay, nice. I think that is a good topic. Anyway, for the next time you are going to give a talk, I don't know when will be, after a couple of months, please include your progress and also the progress in maybe that you are writing a manuscript also with, I think that with Marlon